Admiral Sarah Chen stood at the observation deck of the UES Retribution, watching the swirling hyperspace tunnel collapse behind them as they dropped back into normal space. The stars here looked different than those near Earth. Colder somehow. More distant. She pressed her palm against the reinforced viewport and felt the slight vibration of the ship's massive engines through the hull. "Admiral, we're receiving the final transmission from Kepler Colony," her communications officer announced from behind her. Lieutenant Rodriguez's voice carried a weight that made Chen's stomach tighten. She turned slowly, her reflection ghosting across the starfield. "Put it through to my ready room. Full encryption." The walk to her private quarters felt longer than usual. The corridors of the Retribution buzzed with activity as crew members prepared for what everyone knew was coming. They had been running for 6 months now, ever since the Zolani Confederation had begun their systematic extermination of human colonies along the outer rim. Chen sealed her ready room door and activated the holographic display. The image that materialized made her jaw clench. Governor Marcus Webb appeared before her, his usually pristine uniform torn and bloodied. Behind him, she could see the orange glow of fires through his office windows. "Sarah," Webb's voice crackled through the subspace interference. "If you're receiving this, then you already know what's happened to the other colonies. Proxima Station went dark 3 days ago. New Geneva stopped responding yesterday. We're the last one in this sector." Chen watched her old friend struggle to maintain his composure. They had served together in the Earth Defense Force before Webb retired to civilian governance. He had always been the steady one, the voice of reason in heated strategy meetings. "They hit us at dawn, just like the others," Webb continued. "Same pattern. Orbital bombardment first, targeting our defensive platforms and communications arrays. Then, the ground forces. They're not taking prisoners, Sarah. Men, women, children, they're killing everyone." The transmission flickered as explosions rocked Webb's building. Dust rained from the ceiling behind him. "I need you to know something," Webb said, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. "Before the communications went down, I managed to get a message through to the other sector governors. The Zolani aren't just attacking random colonies. They have detailed intelligence on our settlements, our defensive capabilities, our population centers. Someone gave them this information." Chen's blood ran cold. A betrayal from within. That would explain how the Zolani had managed to coordinate such devastating attacks across multiple star systems simultaneously. "The data core is encrypted and ready for emergency transmission," Webb said. "I'm sending everything we know about their tactics, their ship configurations, their troop movements. Use it well, old friend. Make them pay for what they've done." The background noise grew louder. Shouting voices and the distinctive whine of energy weapons echoed through Webb's office. "They're in the building now," Webb said matter-of-factly. "Sarah, I need you to promise me something. Don't let Earth make the same mistake they made with the Rigel Accords. Don't try to negotiate with these bastards. They don't want our surrender. They want our extinction." The transmission ended abruptly as Webb's office door exploded inward. Chen stared at the empty space where her friend's image had been, her hands clenched into fists. The data packet arrived 30 seconds later. Terabytes of intelligence, tactical analyses, and recorded communications from the Zolani forces. Chen began reviewing it immediately, her tactical training taking over even as grief threatened to overwhelm her. The Zolani Confederation had emerged from the galactic northeast 3 years ago, a coalition of reptilian species that had apparently been watching human expansion for decades. Their technology was advanced but not overwhelmingly superior to human engineering. What made them dangerous was their coordination and their complete ruthlessness. Chen pulled up the casualty reports. New Harmony Colony, 2.3 million dead. Proxima Station, 800,000 dead. New Geneva, 4.1 million dead. And now Kepler Colony would join that list. Over 7 million human beings murdered in less than 6 months. The door chimed. "Enter," Chen called. Commander Jackson Torres stepped inside, his dark face grim. Admiral, we've completed our analysis of the Zilani fleet movements. They're consolidating their forces in the Vega system. Intelligence suggests they're preparing for a major offensive. Against Earth? Chen asked. That's our assessment. They've eliminated most of our forward colonies. Earth is the obvious next target. Torres paused. Admiral, the Admiralty is recalling all surviving fleet elements to Sol system. We're to report to Luna Station for defensive coordination. Chen studied the star charts displayed on her wall. The Zilani had been methodical in their approach, systematically eliminating human presence in the outer systems before advancing toward the core worlds. It was a sound strategy that showed careful planning and patience. No, she said finally. Torres blinked. Admiral? I said no, Commander. We're not running back to Earth with our tails between our legs. Chen stood and walked to the star chart. Look at their pattern. They're advancing along predictable routes, consolidating their gains before moving forward. That kind of methodical approach has a weakness. She pointed to several systems marked in red. They're leaving minimal garrison forces in the conquered territories. Most of their fleet strength is concentrated in these advanced positions. Torres stepped closer to the display. You're suggesting we attack their rear guard? I'm suggesting we do what humans have always done best, Chen replied. We adapt. We improvise. We hit them where they don't expect it. She turned to face her executive officer. The Zilani think they understand human military doctrine because they've been studying us for decades. They expect us to fall back and defend our core worlds. Instead, we're going to show them what human vengeance looks like. Chen activated her command console and began composing new orders. Signal all ships in the task force. We're changing course for the Tau Ceti system. Tau Ceti? Torres looked puzzled. Admiral, that system was evacuated 6 months ago. Exactly. The Zilani wiped out the civilian population, but they left the industrial infrastructure intact. Shipyards, manufacturing facilities, mining operations. They're probably using our own facilities to support their advanced fleet. Chen's smile was cold. Time to take our property back. Over the next several hours, Chen briefed her senior staff on the new mission parameters. The task force consisted of 12 ships, 3 heavy cruisers, 6 destroyers, 2 assault carriers, and the Retribution itself, a battle cruiser that represented the newest generation of human warship design. Captain Lisa Park, commander of the assault carrier Normandy, raised concerns about going up against a fortified position with limited intelligence. Admiral, we don't know what kind of defenses they've established. This could be a suicide mission. Captain, 7 million of our people are dead, Chen replied. Suicide missions are what we have left. She gestured to the tactical display. But, this isn't suicide. It's calculated revenge. The Zilani have made one critical mistake in their campaign. What's that? Asked Commander Sarah Kim from the destroyer Intrepid. They think they know us. They've studied our military history, our tactical doctrines, our standard operating procedures. They know how humans wage war when we're following the rulebook. Chen's eyes hardened. What they don't understand is what happens when you push humans too far. When you murder our children. When you burn our homes. She activated a new display showing ship modifications that had been undertaken during their 6-month retreat. We've been busy while running. New weapons systems, modified shielding, experimental tactics that aren't in any manual the Zilani might have stolen. The modifications were impressive. Human engineers had always been creative, but desperation had pushed them to new levels of innovation. Missile systems that could adapt their targeting algorithms mid-flight. Energy weapons that could shift frequency to penetrate enemy shields. Even close-quarters weapons designed for ship-to-ship boarding actions. The plan is simple, Chen continued. We jump into Tau Ceti at maximum range from their sensor networks. The assault carriers deploy Marines to the surface while the main fleet engages their orbital defenses. We take back our facilities and use them to repair and rearm. Commander Torres pulled up intelligence reports on the Tau Ceti system. Admiral, what about their fleet strength? Our estimates suggest they have at least 20 ships in that system. Good, Shin said. That means we'll have their attention. While we're hitting Tau Ceti, I want every other human commander in this sector to start causing trouble. Hit their supply lines, their communication relays, their isolated outposts. Make them spread their forces thin. She looked around the room at her senior officers. These men and women had lost friends, family members, entire worlds to the Zelani onslaught. She could see the hunger for payback in their eyes. I know what you're thinking, Shen said. This isn't what Earth Command would want us to do. They'd want us to fall back, regroup, wait for reinforcements that might never come. But Earth Command hasn't seen what we've seen. They haven't watched entire colonies burn. Captain Park nodded slowly. Admiral, what about the Geneva Conventions? Rules of engagement? The Geneva Conventions apply to civilized warfare between civilized opponents, Chen replied. The Zelani forfeited any claim to civilized treatment when they started murdering civilian populations. From now on, we fight by one rule: we win. The meeting broke up with officers returning to their ships to prepare for the assault. Shen remained in her ready room, staring at the memorial wall she had constructed over the past 6 months. Photos of the dead colonies, population statistics, personal messages from friends and family who would never send another transmission. Her personal communicator chimed with an encrypted message from Earth Command. Chen almost ignored it, but duty compelled her to read it. Admiral Chen, you are ordered to return immediately to Sol System for defensive coordination. Do not engage enemy forces without explicit authorization. Negotiation efforts are underway through neutral intermediaries. Admiral Harrison, Earth Defense Force. Shen deleted the message without responding. Admiral Harrison was a good man, but he was still thinking like this was a conventional war between rational opponents. The Zelani had demonstrated they had no interest in negotiation or compromise. They wanted humans extinct, and they were methodically working toward that goal. The Retribution's engines hummed with increased power as the task force prepared for their jump to Tau Ceti. Shen made her way to the bridge, where her crew was running final system checks. Jump calculations complete, Admiral, reported Navigator Lieutenant Walsh. We'll emerge approximately 40 million kilometers from the primary star, while outside normal sensor range. Weapons status? Chen asked. All systems nominal, replied Tactical Officer Commander Brown. New plasma torpedo modifications are loaded and ready. Chen settled into her command chair and activated the fleet communication system. All ships, this is Admiral Chen. In 30 seconds, we begin our counterattack against the forces that have murdered our people and burned our worlds. Today, we show them that humanity doesn't just fight for survival. We fight for justice. She paused, looking around at her bridge crew. Young faces, mostly. Some of them had lost everything to the Zelani advance. All of them had volunteered for what everyone knew was likely to be a one-way mission. The Zelani think they understand human nature because they've studied our history, Chen continued. They've read about our wars, our tactics, our weapons. What they haven't learned is the most important thing about humanity: we remember our dead. And we make their killers pay. The countdown reached 0. Space twisted around the human fleet as 12 ships vanished into hyperspace, carrying with them the seeds of a vengeance that would soon engulf the galaxy. In the Tau Ceti system, Zelani sensors detected nothing unusual. Their orbital platforms continued their routine scans while below on the planetary surface, reptilian engineers worked to convert human industrial facilities for their own use. They had no way of knowing that in 6 hours, their comfortable assumptions about human behavior were about to be violently shattered. The war was about to change. The Zelani had awakened something in humanity that they did not understand and could not control. The age of human retreat was ending. The age of human vengeance was about to begin. The hyperspace emergence alarm echoed through the Retribution's corridors as Admiral Chen's task force materialized in the outer reaches of the Tau Ceti system. On the bridge's main display, the tactical officer quickly painted targets as sensors identified 23 Zalani vessels distributed across the system. "Contact," announced Lieutenant Commander Brown. "Zalani battle group in high orbit around Tau Ceti Prime. Composition appears to be 2 heavy cruisers, 8 destroyers, and multiple support vessels." Shen studied the display while her mind processed the tactical situation. The enemy fleet was positioned defensively around the planet, exactly as intelligence had suggested. More importantly, they weren't moving to investigate the human fleet's arrival point. "Range to nearest enemy vessel?" Chen asked. 38 million kilometers and, closing, Brown replied. "At current acceleration, we'll reach engagement range in 4 hours, 17 minutes. "Perfect. That gives us time to deploy the Marines." Chen activated the fleet communications. "Normandy and Saratoga, begin assault deployment. All other vessels, maintain formation and prepare for orbital bombardment mission." Captain Park's voice crackled over the comm from the assault carrier Normandy. "Admiral, Marine deployment commencing. Colonel Martinez reports his forces are ready for surface operations." Chen switched to a private channel with Colonel Martinez, commander of the 5th Assault Marine Regiment. The grizzled veteran had lost his entire family when New Geneva was destroyed, and his thirst for revenge matched her own. "Colonel, what's the situation on the ground?" Martinez's scarred face appeared on her personal display. "Admiral, reconnaissance drones show the Zalani have established garrison forces at 3 major locations: the main spaceport, the orbital elevator terminus, and the primary shipyard complex. Estimated strength is around 5,000 troops total." "That's a lot of ground to cover with 2 Marine regiments," Chen observed. "Yes, ma'am, but we've got advantages they don't know about. Our boys have been training with the new equipment during the retreat. Plus, we know this terrain better than they do. Half my Marines helped build those facilities during the colonial expansion." Chen nodded. Human forces had always excelled at asymmetric warfare, and fighting on formerly human worlds gave them intimate knowledge of the battlefield. "Your orders are simple, Colonel. Take back our facilities and hold them. We'll handle the orbital component." "Understood, Admiral." "One more thing." Martinez's expression darkened. "What are our rules of engagement regarding Zalani prisoners?" Chen was quiet for a moment. Under normal circumstances, the question would have an obvious answer. Human military doctrine emphasized the humane treatment of prisoners and non-combatants. But these weren't normal circumstances. "Colonel, the Zalani have demonstrated they do not take prisoners. They have systematically executed every human civilian they've encountered, including children. I leave prisoner handling to your discretion, but remember that our primary objective is to retake those facilities." Martinez understood the subtext. "Copy that, Admiral." Martinez out. As the hours passed, Chen watched her fleet close distance with the enemy positions. The Zalani still showed no signs of detecting the human approach, despite being well within theoretical sensor range. That suggested they had become complacent after months of unopposed victories. "Admiral," called Communications Officer Rodriguez, "were receiving transmissions from other human commanders in the sector. Captain Williams in the Hyperion system reports successful raids on 3 Zalani supply convoys. Commander Johnson's task force has destroyed a communications relay in the Altair system." Chen smiled grimly. Word was spreading through the scattered human fleets. The retreat was over. "Any response from Earth Command?" "Several messages, ma'am. All ordering us to return to Sol system immediately. Continue to ignore them. Our communication array has been experiencing technical difficulties." Shen's tone made it clear this was an order, not a suggestion. Navigator Lieutenant Walsh looked up from his console. "Admiral, we're approaching the optimal deployment point for marine assault craft. Normandy and Saratoga launch all assault craft. Begin surface operations." Chen watched as dozens of small craft separated from the 2 carriers, their stealth coating making them nearly invisible against the starfield. The marine assault would take another 2 hours to reach the planet's surface. Chen used the time to review intelligence on Zilani ship designs and tactical doctrines. Her enemy preferred energy weapons and heavy shields, but their vessels were slower and less maneuverable than human designs. The key would be using mobility and superior coordination to overcome their defensive advantages. "Admiral, we're detecting movement from the enemy fleet," Brown announced. "It appears they've finally noticed our approach." The Zilani battle group was beginning to spread out from their defensive formation, with several ships moving to intercept the human fleet. Chen had expected this response, but their reaction time suggested they had been caught off guard. "All ships, assume attack formation Delta. We'll hit them in 3 waves. Destroyers first to scatter their formation, then the cruisers for heavy bombardment, followed by the Retribution for cleanup operations." Commander Torres reviewed the tactical display. "Admiral, their heavy cruisers are moving to form a defensive wall between us and the planet." Classic Zilani doctrine. "Good. That means they're doing exactly what we expected." Chen activated the fleet communications. "All vessels, remember our intelligence briefings. Zilani shields are strongest against energy weapons but vulnerable to kinetic projectiles. Our new tungsten penetrators should punch right through their defenses." The first wave of human destroyers accelerated ahead of the main fleet, their sleek hulls cutting through space at velocities that would have been impossible with older human designs. The Zilani formation began to adjust, but their heavier ships couldn't match the acceleration of the human vessels. "Intrepid reports weapons lock on lead Zilani destroyer," Rodriguez announced. "All ships, commence firing." Space erupted in brilliant flashes as human weapons engaged the enemy fleet. The tungsten penetrator rounds proved devastatingly effective against Zilani shields, punching through their defensive barriers and tearing into hull plating. Within minutes, 3 enemy destroyers were drifting powerless, their reactor cores breached. But the Zilani weren't helpless. Their return fire was coordinated and intense, focusing on individual human ships with overwhelming firepower. The destroyer Vigilant took a direct hit from a Zilani plasma cannon, her forward sections vaporizing in a burst of superheated gas. "Vigilant is gone," Brown reported grimly. "No survivors." Chen forced herself to remain focused on the larger battle. Individual losses were tragic, but allowing grief to distract her would only lead to more casualties. "Second wave, begin your attack run." The 3 human cruisers opened fire with their main batteries, massive railguns that launched projectiles at significant fractions of light speed. The kinetic energy was devastating to Zilani ships, which had been designed to absorb energy weapons rather than physical impacts. One of the enemy heavy cruisers, a massive vessel nearly twice the size of the Retribution, took multiple direct hits along its engineering section. Secondary explosions rippled along its hull as internal systems failed catastrophically. "Target is breaking up," Brown announced with satisfaction. Chen watched the enemy ship die and felt no sympathy. Each Zilani vessel destroyed was justice for the murdered colonists, revenge for the children who would never see another sunrise. "Admiral," called Rodriguez, "we're receiving a transmission from the surface. Colonel Martinez reports successful landing at all 3 target sites. Put him through." Martinez's voice was barely audible over the sounds of weapons fire in the background. "Admiral, we've secured the spaceport and are moving on the shipyard complex. Zilani resistance is lighter than expected, but they're fighting hard. These bastards don't surrender. How long until you can get the orbital defenses operational?" "Give me 2 hours, ma'am. My engineers are working on the control systems now." 2 hours. Chen calculated the timeline in her head. The space battle would be decided long before then, but if her fleet could hold out, the orbital defenses would give them a significant advantage for the next phase of operations. "Understood, Colonel. We'll keep the Zilani busy up here." The battle had now been raging for 40 minutes, and both fleets were showing significant damage. The human forces had lost 2 destroyers and the cruiser Wellington, while the Zilani had lost 6 ships including one of their heavy cruisers. "Admiral, the remaining Zilani heavy cruiser is changing course," Brown announced. "It's moving away from the planet toward the edge of the system." Chen frowned. that didn't match Solani tactical doctrine. They typically fought to defend strategic positions rather than retreating. Track that ship carefully. I want to know where it's going. The answer came 10 minutes later as the fleeing heavy cruiser began transmitting on subspace frequencies. The ship was attempting to contact other Zolani forces in nearby systems, calling for reinforcements. Rodriguez, can you jam that transmission? Working on it, Admiral, but they're using military-grade encryption. I can disrupt it but not block it completely. Chen made a quick decision. Retribution, full power to engines. We're going after that heavy cruiser. Commander Torres looked concerned. Admiral, that will take us away from the main battle. The main battle is won. Look at the tactical display. Chen gestured to the status board. The remaining Zolani ships are damaged and disorganized. Our cruisers can handle cleanup operations. But, if that heavy cruiser gets its message through, we'll have 3 times our number of enemy ships here within hours. The Retribution broke away from the main engagement, her powerful engines pushing the battlecruiser to maximum acceleration. The fleeing Zolani ship was fast, but the newer human vessel was faster. Time to intercept? Chen asked. 18 minutes at current acceleration, Walsh replied. Chen studied the tactical plot. 18 minutes might be too long if the Zolani managed to complete their transmission. All power to engines. Emergency acceleration. The ship's artificial gravity system struggled to compensate as the Retribution pushed beyond safe operational limits. Chen felt herself pressed back into her command chair as the battlecruiser gained speed. 12 minutes to intercept, Walsh announced. Chen opened a channel to the weapons department. Commander Brown, I want all forward batteries ready for a single devastating salvo. We'll only get one chance at this. The minutes ticked by with agonizing slowness as the Retribution closed the gap with her quarry. Behind them, the main battle was winding down as the surviving Zolani ships were systematically destroyed by the human cruisers. 5 minutes to weapons range, Brown announced. Admiral, Rodriguez called out, the Zolani ship has completed its transmission. They got their message through. Chen felt her stomach drop. Reinforcements were coming, which meant her small fleet would soon be facing overwhelming odds. But there was nothing to do now except complete the mission and prepare for the next battle. Target acquired, Brown announced. All weapons locked on target. Fire. The Retribution's main batteries spoke as one, sending a concentrated barrage of tungsten penetrators into the fleeing Zolani ship. The enemy vessel's shields collapsed under the impact, and the kinetic energy tore massive holes through its hull structure. The Zolani heavy cruiser died in a series of internal explosions as its reactor containment failed. Chen watched the expanding cloud of debris and felt a moment of grim satisfaction. Justice for New Geneva. Justice for Proxima Station. Justice for all the dead colonies. Admiral, called Rodriguez, Colonel Martinez reports the orbital defenses are now operational. All 3 target sites are secure. Chen nodded and opened a channel to the fleet. All ships, return to planetary orbit. We have work to do. As the human fleet regrouped around Tau Ceti Prime, Chen began planning the next phase of operations. The Zolani reinforcements would arrive within 24 hours, but now humanity had a foothold in former Zolani territory. More importantly, they had sent a message that would spread throughout the galaxy. Humanity was no longer retreating. The war had begun in earnest, and the Zolani were about to learn why humans had conquered their home world long before they had ever reached the stars. The captured Zolani command center buzzed with activity as human technicians worked to integrate the alien technology with their own systems. Admiral Chen stood before a massive holographic display that showed star charts spanning hundreds of light-years, each red marker representing a Zolani military asset. This is incredible intelligence, said Commander Torres, studying the tactical data. They've been tracking our fleet movements for months, but now we have their entire operational structure. Chen nodded as she examined the enemy dispositions. The Zolani Confederation was larger than Earth intelligence had estimated, with over 300 warships spread across 40 star systems. But the display also revealed critical weaknesses in their logistics network. "Colonel Martinez, what's the status of our ground operations?" Chen asked as the Marine commander approached. Martinez looked tired but satisfied. "All 3 facilities are secure, Admiral. We've captured intact manufacturing equipment, weapons stockpiles, and, most importantly, their communication network. My intelligence team has been extracting data from their computer systems." "Any prisoners?" Chen asked. Martinez's expression darkened. "A few, but they're not talking. We found evidence of their activities since they took the colony. Mass graves, Admiral. They've been executing captured humans and using our own facilities to dispose of the bodies." Chen felt cold fury wash through her. She had known intellectually that the Zelani were committing genocide, but seeing the evidence made it personal. "How many?" "At least 50,000 on this world alone. Men, women, children. They kept detailed records." Martinez handed her a data pad. "They seem proud of their work." Chen forced herself to review the files. Photos of execution sites, body counts organized by age and gender, even video recordings of mass killings. The Zelani weren't just eliminating human military forces, they were systematically exterminating the entire species. "Admiral," called out Lieutenant Rodriguez from the communications station, "we're receiving a transmission from the Hyperion system. It's Captain Williams aboard the Defiance." Chen looked up from the horrific records. "Put him through." Captain Williams' weathered face appeared on the main display. His uniform was scorched and torn, and Chen could see smoke drifting through his bridge behind him. "Admiral Chen, thank God you're still alive. I've been trying to reach you for 6 hours. Report, Captain. We've been hitting Zelani supply convoys as ordered, but they're adapting fast. They've started using heavy escorts and coordinated patrol routes. I've lost 2 ships in the last day, but we've managed to destroy 17 enemy vessels." Chen studied Williams' face, seeing the exhaustion and strain of constant combat. "What about your crew status?" "Down to 60% strength across the task force. But morale is high, Admiral. Word is spreading through the fleet about your victory at Tau Ceti. Every human commander in this sector is looking for Zelani ships to kill." That was exactly what Chen wanted to hear. The human fleet had been demoralized by months of retreat and defeat. Now they were remembering how to fight back. "Captain, I'm transmitting new intelligence data to your fleet. Zelani supply routes, convoy schedules, and defensive positions. Use it well." "Thank you, Admiral. There's something else you need to know. Earth Command has issued arrest warrants for you and your senior staff. Admiral Harrison is calling your actions mutinous and illegal." Chen wasn't surprised. Earth's political leadership had always favored diplomatic solutions over military action. They couldn't understand that diplomacy only worked when both sides wanted to find a peaceful solution. "Captain, you're free to follow Earth Command's orders if you choose. But I need you to understand something. The Zelani aren't interested in peace talks or territorial concessions. They want every human being dead, and they have the military strength to achieve that goal unless we stop them." Williams was quiet for a moment. "Admiral, I've seen the intelligence reports. I know what they did to the colonies. My orders are to continue operations under your command until further notice." Chen smiled for the first time in days. "Understood, Captain." Chen out. As the transmission ended, Torres approached with a worried expression. "Admiral, we need to discuss the strategic situation. According to this captured intelligence, Zelani reinforcements will arrive in less than 18 hours. We're looking at a fleet of over 40 ships." Chen studied the tactical projections. Her small task force had been reduced to 8 operational vessels after the battle, while the enemy was sending enough firepower to glass the entire planet. A conventional engagement would be suicide. "What about the orbital defenses?" Chen asked. Colonel Martinez's engineers have restored most of the weapons platforms, but they're designed to repel raiders, not a major fleet assault. We might be able to damage a few enemy ships, but we can't stop 40 vessels. Chen walked to the large viewport overlooking the planet's surface. Tau Ceti Prime had been a thriving human colony just 6 months ago, home to over 2 million people. Now it was a graveyard, its cities burned and its people murdered. But it could also be something else, the foundation for humanity's counterattack. Commander, what's the status of the shipyard facilities? Torres consulted his data pad. Operational, but barely. The Zelani were using them to produce spare parts and ammunition for their fleet. Our engineers estimate we could repair and rearm our damaged ships, but it would take weeks. What about new construction? Admiral, we don't have the resources or time to build new vessels. The Zelani will be here in hours. Chen turned back to the tactical display, her mind working through possibilities. The conventional approach would be to evacuate the planet and retreat to another system. But conventional thinking had led to the loss of 7 million human lives. Colonel Martinez, join me in the conference room. I want to discuss our options. 20 minutes later, Chen's senior staff gathered around a holotable displaying the Tau Ceti system. The approaching Zelani fleet showed as a mass of red contacts moving steadily toward their position. Gentlemen and ladies, we have two choices, Chen began. We can evacuate this planet and continue our fighting retreat, or we can stand and fight with everything we have. Captain Park from the carrier Normandy looked skeptical. Admiral, with respect, fighting 40 ships with 8 is suicide. We should preserve our forces for a better opportunity. Captain, there won't be a better opportunity. The Zelani are systematically eliminating human presence throughout this sector. If we don't stop them here, there won't be anywhere left to retreat to. Chen highlighted several points on the tactical display. However, we're not going to fight a conventional battle. We're going to do what humans do best, we're going to cheat. She gestured to Colonel Martinez. Colonel, explain the assets we've captured. Martinez stood and activated a new display showing the planet's surface installations. We now control 3 major manufacturing facilities, including a shipyard capable of producing heavy weapons systems. More importantly, we've captured intact Zelani computer networks and communication equipment. Shen smiled as understanding dawned on several faces around the table. That's right. We're going to use their own systems against them. She activated a detailed schematic of Zelani ship configurations. According to the captured intelligence, Zelani vessels rely heavily on networked fire control systems. They coordinate their attacks through real-time data sharing between ships. Commander Torres caught on immediately. If we can hack into their network, we can turn their greatest strength into their greatest weakness, Chen finished. Colonel Martinez, do we have the technical capability to infiltrate their communication systems? Martinez consulted with his intelligence officer, a young woman who had been working with the captured equipment. Admiral, we believe so. The Zelani use quantum encryption, but we've captured their encoding keys along with their hardware. With some modifications to our own systems, we should be able to insert false data into their network. Chen felt excitement building for the first time since the war began. What kind of false data? Anything we want, the intelligence officer replied. False target coordinates, incorrect damage assessments, even bogus fleet movement orders. Once we're inside their network, we can feed them whatever information serves our purposes. Captain Park still looked doubtful. Admiral, even if we can confuse their coordination, we're still outnumbered 5-1. Their raw firepower advantage is overwhelming. That's where the second part of our plan comes in, Chen said. She activated a display showing the asteroid belt in the outer system. The Zelani aren't the only ones who can call in reinforcements. Commander Torres studied the display. Admiral, those are just mining asteroids. They don't have any military value. They do if we put weapons on them. Chen expanded the view to show detailed schematics. The captured manufacturing facilities can produce missile systems and automated gun platforms. We have 18 hours to turn those asteroids into a minefield. The room was quiet as her staff considered the implications. It was an enormous undertaking that would require perfect coordination between multiple engineering teams working under extreme time pressure. It could work, Martinez said slowly. My Marines can provide security for the engineering teams, and we have enough captured Zilani equipment to make the weapons platforms look like their own installations. Chen nodded. The Zilani will enter the system expecting to face 8 human ships hiding behind orbital defenses. Instead, they'll find themselves in a kill zone filled with hidden weapons platforms, all while their own coordination systems feed them false information. Captain Park was beginning to look convinced. What about the orbital defenses? Can we use those as part of the deception? Absolutely. We'll program them to target specific Zilani ships based on the false data we're feeding into their network. Their own computers will tell them which vessels are damaged and which are threats, making our job much easier. The planning session continued for several hours as Chen's staff worked out the technical details. By the time they finished, they had a comprehensive battle plan that relied on deception, misdirection, and superior human engineering skills. All right, people, you have your assignments, Chen announced. I want those asteroid platforms operational in 16 hours. Colonel Martinez, your teams will handle the network infiltration. Everyone else, prepare your ships for what may be the most important battle of this war. As her staff dispersed to their duties, Chen remained in the conference room, staring at the tactical display. The approaching Zilani fleet represented enough firepower to destroy her forces 10 times over. But they had never faced humans fighting for their very survival. The next 18 hours would determine the future of the human species. Either they would prove that humanity deserved its place in the galaxy, or they would join the millions of dead in the colonies the Zilani had already destroyed. Chen thought about Governor Webb's final message, about the children murdered on Kepler Colony, about the mass graves Martinez had discovered. The Zilani had shown humanity what they truly were, genocidal monsters who would not stop until every human was dead. Tomorrow, humanity would show the Zilani what they were, the most dangerous species in the galaxy when pushed to the edge of extinction. The work began immediately, with human engineers and Marines swarming through the asteroid belt to plant hidden weapons platforms. On the planet's surface, captured Zilani communication equipment was being modified to serve humanity's purposes. And, in the depths of space, 40 Zilani warships continued their approach, confident they were moving to crush the last organized human resistance in the sector. They had no idea they were flying into a trap that would change the course of the war. The asteroid belt around Tau Ceti Prime had been transformed into humanity's greatest military gamble. Hidden within the seemingly empty rocks were 200 automated weapon platforms, each one disguised to appear as natural debris on Zilani sensors. Admiral Chen watched the final preparations from her command center, knowing that in 3 hours, the largest space battle in human history would begin. Admiral, the network infiltration is complete, announced Lieutenant Sarah Kim, the intelligence specialist who had been working with captured Zilani communication systems. We now have full access to their tactical coordination network. When their fleet arrives, we'll be able to monitor all their communications and feed them false data. Chen studied the young officer's tired face. Kim had been working for 36 hours straight, surviving on stimulants and determination. Excellent work, Lieutenant. What kind of false information can we inject? Kim activated a holographic display showing the Zilani fleet formation. We can do almost anything, Admiral. Make their sensors show false ship positions, incorrect damage reports, even fake orders from their command structure. Their entire tactical doctrine relies on shared information between vessels, which makes them vulnerable to data manipulation. Perfect. When the battle begins, I want you to focus on their command ship. If we can confuse their fleet coordination, the individual ships will be much easier targets. Commander Torres approached with the latest reports from the engineering teams. Admiral, all asteroid platforms are operational. Each one is armed with 6 heavy missiles and automated targeting systems. More importantly, we've managed to cloak them using modified Zilani stealth technology. Chen nodded approvingly. Human engineers had always been resourceful, but desperation had pushed them to new levels of creativity. They had taken alien technology, improved it, and turned it against its creators in less than 2 days. What about our fleet positioning? All ships are in assigned positions throughout the asteroid belt. We're spread out enough to avoid massed enemy fire, but close enough to coordinate our attacks. The Zilani will enter the system thinking they're facing 8 ships behind planetary defenses, but they'll actually be walking into a crossfire from over 200 hidden positions. Chen felt a moment of pride in her people. 6 months ago, they had been retreating in defeat, their fleets scattered and demoralized. Now they were preparing to face odds of 5-1 with confidence and tactical superiority. Admiral, called out Communications Officer Rodriguez, were receiving reports from other sectors. Human fleets throughout the region are launching coordinated attacks on Zilani positions. Captain Williams has destroyed a major supply depot in the Hyperion system. Commander Johnson reports successful raids on 3 different Zilani garrison fleets. Chen smiled grimly. The word was spreading through the scattered human forces. The retreat was over, and humanity was fighting back across dozens of star systems simultaneously. Any word from Earth Command? Admiral Harrison is demanding an immediate halt to all offensive operations. He's threatening courts-martial for any officer who continues to engage the enemy without authorization. Chen shook her head in disgust. Earth's leadership still didn't understand the nature of the war they were fighting. They thought this was a territorial dispute that could be resolved through negotiation and compromise. Rodriguez, transmit a message to all human commanders in the sector. Tell them that Admiral Harrison can court-martial us all he wants, but only if we survive long enough to attend the trial. Today we show the galaxy what happens when you try to exterminate humanity. As the final hour approached, Chen moved to the observation deck to watch the space around Tau Ceti Prime. To casual observation, the asteroid belt looked exactly as it had before the war, a collection of rocky debris orbiting the system's star. Only the most detailed scans would reveal the hidden weapons platforms disguised among the natural asteroids. Admiral, Lieutenant Walsh called from the navigation station, Zilani fleet is dropping out of hyperspace. 41 ships, exactly as intelligence predicted. Chen returned to the bridge and studied the tactical display as enemy contacts appeared throughout the system. The Zilani fleet was impressive: 12 heavy cruisers, 20 destroyers, 6 assault carriers, and 3 massive dreadnoughts that represented the most powerful warships in their fleet. "My God," whispered Commander Torres. "Those dreadnoughts are enormous. Each one is twice the size of our heaviest battleships." Chen had studied the intelligence files on Zilani dreadnoughts. They were fortress ships designed to destroy entire planetary defense networks single-handedly. Under normal circumstances, even one dreadnought would be enough to overwhelm her task force. But these weren't normal circumstances. Lieutenant Kim, begin the network infiltration. I want their coordination systems compromised before they reach weapons range. Kim's fingers flew across her console as she accessed the Zilani communication network. I'm inside their system, Admiral. Their fleet commander is Admiral Kregstar aboard the Dreadnought Extinction's Edge. He's ordering a standard orbital assault formation. Chen studied the enemy fleet's movement patterns. The Zilani were approaching cautiously, their ships spread out to avoid concentrated defensive fire from the planetary surface. They had no idea they were flying into the most sophisticated ambush in military history. All units, stand by for combat operations. Remember, we strike hard and fast, then disappear back into the asteroid field before they can respond effectively. The Zilani fleet continued its advance, their massive ships maintaining perfect formation as they approached the inner system. Chen watched their progress and felt a cold satisfaction. In 30 minutes, these ships would begin paying for the genocide of human colonies. Admiral, Kim announced, I'm detecting increased communication traffic between their vessels. Admiral Kregstar is requesting detailed scans of the planetary defenses. Feed him exactly what he expects to see, Chen ordered. Show him 8 human ships trying to hide behind orbital weapons platforms. Make it look like we're preparing for a desperate last stand. Kim began manipulating the data flowing through the Zilani network, carefully crafting false sensor readings that would reinforce their enemies' preconceptions about human defensive tactics. Enemy fleet is splitting into 3 attack groups, Torres reported. 2 groups are moving to flank the planet while the main force approaches directly. Perfect. The Zilani were spreading out their ships, making them more vulnerable to the hidden weapons platforms scattered throughout the asteroid belt. All platforms, prepare for automated engagement. Target priority is the dreadnoughts, followed by heavy cruisers, then destroyers. Chen activated the fleet communication system. All human vessels, this is Admiral Chen. In 5 minutes, we begin the Battle of Tau Ceti. Today we prove that humanity will not go quietly into extinction. Today we show the galaxy that Earth's children are the most dangerous species alive when you threaten their survival. The bridge crew worked with grim efficiency as the final minutes counted down. Every human ship was hidden among the asteroids, their weapons charged and targeting systems locked onto approaching enemy vessels. 3 minutes to weapons range, Torres announced. Chen watched the tactical display as the Zilani fleet moved deeper into her trap. The enemy ships maintained their formation, confident in their overwhelming numerical superiority. Admiral, Kim called out, Admiral Krekstar is broadcasting to our fleet. He's demanding our surrender. Put him through. I want to hear this. The main display activated, showing a massive reptilian creature covered in elaborate armor. Admiral Krekstar's yellow eyes burned with predatory intelligence as he spoke in accented but clear English. Human Admiral, I am Krekstar of the Extinction Fleet. Your species has proven to be a dangerous infection in this galaxy. We offer you one final opportunity to surrender your vessels and die with honor. Chen stepped forward, making sure her image was being transmitted to the enemy fleet commander. Admiral Krekstar, I am Admiral Sarachun of the Earth Defense Force. Your forces have murdered over 7 million human civilians, including children. The only honor here will be watching your ships burn. Krekstar's massive head tilted slightly, as if puzzled by her response. You face 41 ships with barely 8 of your own. Even your species cannot be foolish enough to believe you can achieve victory. Admiral, you've made one critical error in your calculations, Chen replied coldly. You assume you're fighting 8 ships. She gestured to Kim, who immediately activated the hidden weapons platforms throughout the asteroid belt. You're actually fighting 208. The space around the Zilani fleet erupted in weapons fire as every hidden platform opened up simultaneously. Thousands of missiles streaked toward the enemy ships while energy weapons carved through their shields like paper. The lead Zilani destroyer simply vanished in a cloud of expanding plasma as 12 missiles struck it within seconds. 2 heavy cruisers took massive damage as automated gun platforms revealed themselves among the asteroids. What? Krekstar's voice carried shock and rage. How is this possible? Simple, Chen replied as her own ships emerged from hiding to join the attack. We learned from you. You taught us that in this war, there are no rules except victory. The battle became a massacre as the Zilani fleet found itself surrounded by enemies they couldn't see until it was too late. Their coordination network, compromised by Kim's infiltration, began feeding them false damage reports and incorrect target data. Their lead dreadnought is taking heavy fire, Torres reported with satisfaction. Multiple hull breaches on decks 7 through 15. Chen watched the mighty Extinction's edge stagger under the coordinated assault from dozens of hidden weapons platforms. The massive ship's shields flickered and failed as human missiles found their targets. Admiral Krekstar, Chen broadcast to the dying ship, this is for New Geneva. This is for Proxima Station. This is for every human child your people murdered. The Extinction's edge exploded in a brilliant flash that lit up the entire asteroid belt. The other 2 dreadnoughts tried to retreat, but they were trapped in the crossfire between hidden platforms and human warships. Within 20 minutes, the most powerful Zilani fleet ever assembled was reduced to scattered debris floating through the Tau Ceti system. Only 6 enemy ships managed to escape, and they were damaged so badly they would never fight again. Chen stood on her bridge, watching the aftermath of humanity's greatest military victory. The asteroid belt was littered with the wreckage of 41 Zilani warships, including the 3 dreadnoughts that were supposed to be unstoppable. Admiral Rodriguez announced, "We're receiving transmissions from across the sector. Word of our victory is spreading to every human fleet in the region. Good. Signal all commanders that the counteroffensive has begun. We're no longer running from the Zelani. We're hunting them." Chen looked at the tactical display showing the captured enemy intelligence network. The Zelani had detailed information on their own military positions throughout dozens of star systems, and, now that intelligence belonged to humanity. "Commander Torres, begin planning our next operation. I want to hit their main logistics base in the Centauri system within the week." Torres looked surprised. "Admiral, shouldn't we consolidate our position here first? We've just won a major victory." "Commander, the Zelani think they understand human military doctrine because they've been studying our history for decades. They expect us to consolidate, regroup, and advance methodically." Chen's smile was predatory. "Instead, we're going to do what humans do best, the unexpected." She gestured to the intelligence displays showing Zelani positions throughout the sector. "We're going to hit them everywhere at once, faster than they can respond, harder than they can imagine." They wanted to exterminate humanity. Instead, they're about to learn why our species conquered an entire planet before we ever reached the stars. The Battle of Tau Ceti was over, but the war was just beginning. And, for the first time since the Zelani invasion began, humanity was winning. 6 months after the Battle of Tau Ceti, Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of her flagship as it emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Zelani home system. Behind her followed the largest human fleet ever assembled, 300 ships carrying the combined fury of a species pushed to the brink of extinction. The war had changed dramatically since that first desperate victory. Human forces had swept through Zelani territory like a wildfire, destroying military installations, liberating captured worlds, and systematically dismantling the infrastructure that had supported the alien Confederation's war machine. "Admiral, we're detecting massive defensive installations around Zelac Prime," reported Commander Torres from his position at the tactical station. "Orbital fortresses, defensive platforms, and at least 200 warships." Chen studied the main display showing the Zelani homeworld and its formidable defenses. After months of defeats, the surviving Zelani forces had fallen back to their core systems, concentrating their remaining strength for a final desperate stand. "What's the status of our intelligence network?" Chen asked. Lieutenant Kim, now promoted to full commander after her success at Tau Ceti, looked up from her console. "We've maintained access to their communication systems, Admiral. Their Supreme Marshal Vexran is coordinating the defense personally. Intelligence indicates they have approximately 400,000 military personnel on the planet's surface, plus civilian populations in the billions." Chen nodded grimly. The Zelani homeworld represented the culmination of humanity's campaign of vengeance. Everything that had happened over the past 18 months, the murdered colonies, the desperate retreat, the long road back to this moment, had been leading to this final confrontation. "Admiral," called Communications Officer Rodriguez, "we're receiving a transmission from Earth Command." "It's Admiral Harrison." Chen sighed. Earth's political leadership had been trying to stop her campaign for months, demanding negotiations and prisoner exchanges that the Zelani had consistently refused. They still didn't understand that this wasn't a conventional war between rational opponents. "Put him through." Admiral Harrison's weathered face appeared on the main display, his expression a mixture of anger and desperation. "Sarah, for God's sake, you have to stop this madness. You're about to attack a world with billions of civilians." Admiral Harrison, those billions of civilians supported a military that systematically murdered every human civilian it encountered. They cheered when their fleets burned our colonies. They celebrated the genocide of our children. Harrison leaned forward, his voice pleading. "Sarah, you're better than this. We both know that wholesale slaughter of civilian populations violates everything we've fought for as a species." Chen felt a moment of doubt, but then she remembered Governor Webb's final transmission, the mass graves on Tau Ceti, the intelligence files documenting Zelani execution methods. "Admiral, the Zelani forfeited any claim to mercy when they decided to exterminate humanity. They made the rules of this war. I'm simply following them to their logical conclusion." The Senate is ordering you to return to Earth immediately for court-martial proceedings. Your actions have gone far beyond military necessity into outright revenge. You're right, Chen replied calmly. This is revenge. 7 million dead humans deserve justice, and I intend to provide it. She gestured to Rodriguez to cut the transmission. Earth Command could issue all the orders they wanted, but they were 300 light-years away and had no way to enforce their demands. Admiral, Torres announced, the Zalani defense fleet is moving to intercept. 215 ships in a defensive wall formation. Chen studied the enemy positioning. The Zalani had learned from their defeats, abandoning their traditional coordinated tactics in favor of massed formations that were harder to outmaneuver. But they had also made themselves vulnerable to concentrated firepower. All ships, assume attack formation Omega. We'll hit them with everything we have in a single devastating assault. The human fleet spread out into a complex three-dimensional formation that maximized their firing angles while minimizing their exposure to return fire. Months of constant combat had turned Chen's forces into the most experienced space fleet in galactic history. Admiral, Commander Kim announced, I'm detecting unusual communication patterns from the Zalani defense fleet. They're not using their standard tactical coordination protocols. Explain. Kim frowned at her displays. It appears they've abandoned their networked fire control systems entirely. Each ship is operating independently. They've learned from our tactics at Tau Ceti. Chen felt a moment of respect for her enemy. The Zalani military leadership had adapted to humanity's unconventional warfare methods, sacrificing coordination for security. It was a smart tactical decision that would make the coming battle much more difficult. All ships, prepare for conventional engagement. No deception this time, we'll settle this with raw firepower. The space between the two fleets erupted in weapons fire as 300 human ships engaged 215 Zalani vessels in the largest space battle in recorded history. The scale was unprecedented, with thousands of missiles and energy beams crisscrossing the void between massive capital ships. Chen watched as the heavy cruiser Defiance took direct hits from 3 Zalani dreadnoughts, her hull buckling under the concentrated assault. But Captain Williams' ship gave as good as it got, her main batteries punching through enemy shields to devastate a Zalani heavy cruiser. Admiral, we're receiving reports from across the fleet, Torres called out over the sound of weapons fire. Heavy casualties on both sides, but we're maintaining tactical advantage. The battle raged for 3 hours as both fleets hammered each other with everything they had. The Zalani fought with desperate courage, knowing they were defending their homeworld against an enemy that had shown no mercy to their kind. But human technology, tactics, and sheer determination gradually won out. One by one, the Zalani ships were destroyed or disabled until only scattered survivors remained. The enemy fleet is broken, Torres reported with grim satisfaction. Orbital defenses are still operational, but their mobile forces are neutralized. Chen activated the fleet communication system. All assault carriers, begin marine deployment. All bombardment ships, target the orbital defense platforms. We're going to finish this. The final phase of the battle began as human marines landed on the planet's surface while the fleet systematically destroyed the remaining orbital defenses. Chen watched the tactical displays showing dozens of simultaneous ground engagements across the Zalani homeworld. Admiral, Rodriguez announced, we're receiving a transmission from the planet's surface. It's Supreme Marshal Vexran requesting terms of surrender. Chen felt a moment of cold satisfaction. After 18 months of war, the Zalani leadership was finally ready to discuss surrender. Put him through. The main display showed a massive reptilian creature in elaborate military regalia, his yellow eyes filled with hatred and resignation. Supreme Marshal Vexran had commanded the forces that destroyed humanity's colonies, and now he faced the consequences of those actions. Human Admiral, Vexran spoke in heavily accented English, I request terms for the surrender of Zalani forces. Chen studied her enemy's face, seeing the arrogance that had driven his species to attempt genocide against humanity. Marshal Vexran, you seem to be under the impression that I'm interested in accepting your surrender. Vexran's massive head tilted in confusion. You have achieved victory. Surely you will accept our capitulation. Marshal, when your forces attacked human colonies, did you accept surrender from our civilian populations? The humans were a threat to galactic stability. Elimination was necessary for the security of civilized species. Chen felt cold fury wash through her. Even now, facing the destruction of his homeworld, the Zilani leader showed no remorse for the genocide his forces had committed. Then, you understand my position perfectly, Chen replied. Humanity considers the Zilani Confederation a threat to galactic stability. Elimination is necessary for the security of civilized species. Vexran's eyes widened in understanding. You cannot mean to destroy our entire civilization. There are billions of civilians on this world. The same civilians who celebrated when your fleets burned New Geneva? Who cheered when your forces executed human children? They are complicit in genocide, Marshal. They will share its consequences. Chen gestured to her weapons officer. All ships, commence planetary bombardment. Target all major population centers and military installations. Admiral, wait. Vexran's voice carried desperate panic. We surrender unconditionally. We will pay reparations, provide intelligence, anything you demand. Chen paused, her finger hovering over the weapons authorization. For a moment she considered the offer, thinking about the practical benefits of accepting Zilani surrender. Prisoner interrogations, captured technology, strategic intelligence, all valuable assets for humanity's future security. But, then, she remembered the children of Kepler Colony, the mass graves on Tau Ceti, the 18 months of running battles against an enemy that had never shown mercy to human civilians. Marshal Vexran, I want you to understand something. This isn't a negotiation. This isn't a territorial dispute. This is justice for 7 million murdered humans. Your people made this choice when they decided to exterminate mine. She activated the weapons authorization. All ships, commence bombardment. The space around Zilak Prime lit up with the fire of 300 human warships as they began the systematic destruction of the Zilani homeworld. Orbital strikes targeted government centers, military installations, industrial complexes, and major population centers. Chen watched the planet burn and felt no satisfaction, only a deep weariness. This wasn't victory, it was the completion of a terrible necessity. The Zilani had forced humanity to become something it had never wanted to be, a species capable of genocide. Admiral, Torres reported, surface resistance is collapsing. Our Marines report minimal opposition in most sectors. What about civilian casualties? Estimated at 60 million and climbing. The Zilani government facilities have been completely destroyed, along with most major cities. Chen nodded, feeling the weight of those numbers. 60 million lives ended in a few hours of bombardment. But, it was a fraction of the casualties the Zilani had inflicted on humanity, and far less than the billions they would have murdered if left unchecked. Admiral, Rodriguez announced, we're receiving transmissions from across the galaxy. Multiple species are demanding an immediate halt to the bombardment. They're calling it a war crime. Chen laughed bitterly. Where were these righteous voices when the Zilani were murdering human children? Tell them that humanity has learned a valuable lesson about galactic justice. If you want it done right, you have to do it yourself. The bombardment continued for 6 hours until the major population centers of the Zilani homeworld were reduced to radioactive craters. When it ended, the Zilani Confederation had effectively ceased to exist as an interstellar power. Admiral, Commander Kim reported, we're detecting surrender signals from all remaining Zilani military installations throughout the sector. Their surviving fleet commanders are requesting terms. Chen studied the galaxy-wide tactical display showing the collapse of Zilani resistance throughout their former territory. After 18 months of total war, humanity had achieved complete victory over the species that had tried to exterminate them. Signal all Zilani commanders that unconditional surrender will be accepted. All military personnel will be taken prisoner. All military assets will be confiscated. Any attempt at further resistance will result in the complete destruction of all Zilani colonies. She paused, looking around at her bridge crew. These men and women had followed her through the darkest period in human history, fighting battles that had transformed them all into something harder and colder than they had been before the war. Commander Torres, begin planning occupation operations for former Zalani territory. Commander Kim, I want intelligence teams analyzing everything we've captured. We need to understand how they managed to coordinate their initial attacks so effectively. As her staff dispersed to their duties, Chen remained on the bridge, staring at the burning planet below. The war was over, but its consequences would shape galactic politics for centuries to come. Humanity had proven it could survive attempted genocide, but, in the process, they had become the most feared species in the galaxy. Every alien civilization would now know that humans responded to existential threats with overwhelming, merciless force. The galaxy had learned a hard lesson about the species from Earth. Humanity could be peaceful neighbors or genocidal enemies, but the choice belonged entirely to those who decided how to treat them. And, somewhere in the expanding cloud of debris that had once been the Zalani homeworld, that lesson would echo through history as a warning to any species foolish enough to threaten Earth's children with extinction. The age of human vengeance was complete. The age of human dominance had begun.